The Honourable Minister of Education and Early Childhood Development.
Thank you. For French First Language for this year is 8.5. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Colchester North.
The question, so could you also give me for French second language, was the 2 grants that you spoke about?
The Honourable Minister of Education and Early Childhood Development.
So it's this number here, million.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. French second language for this coming year is $1,074,000 for administration. For the French second language support is $279,000 for administration for first language. French first language is $581,000, and French language grants, this is $6,400. I think I've covered this, unfortunately, and I apologize for the delay in answering. The font, I think, is as small as they could make it to get all of the information on the page, so it's just hard to read the chart, so thank you.
The Honourable Member for Colchester North.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The question was, how much federal money did we get to cover both first and second language instruction? And I believe you told me in the first part of your answer that French first language, the grant was $8.5 million. The question now is, what is the grant for French second language from the feds?
The Honourable Minister of Education and Early Childhood Development.
Thank you very much. $8.5 million is the total grant coming from the federal government for French first and second language.
The Honourable Member for Colchester North.
Thank you. Do you have a breakdown of which is which? Which is how much for French first and how much for French second?
You have until 4:28. The Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you for your patience. So under French second language, under the administration portion, the federal government grant will be $1,074,000. Under French second language for support is $279,000. For the French as a first language for administration is $206,000, and for French first language is $581,000, and our first language, French language grants are $6,400,000. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Colchester North.
Perhaps I'll check with you later. That doesn't add up for my numbers, but I won't spend any more time on it. Could we go to 7.3, please? 7.3, which is the public schools education funding, and when you look down through the estimate to actual and then actual to the new estimate, you see significant decline, I guess, from estimate to from actual to estimate. Can the minister explain why the $11.2 million difference?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much, and I will ask staff to look at the numbers that we have provided to us in our books, because I know the staff have worked hard to bring all of this information for the public to know where our money's being spent, and that's the information that staff have at this time. So I'll ask them to add it up just to see if there is a discrepancy between the $8.5 million and the numbers that I read out on the floor, because we need to make sure that that information is correct. So I'll ask staff to do that. The question was the difference in funding from estimate to estimate is the difference by the MET, the municipal education tax. Where is my information?
The Honourable Member for Colchester North.
Perhaps I could ask the member that question again. If we're looking at the total funding in the public school education funding, which is on 7.3, we're looking at $1.093 billion and $1.082 billion. I'm asking what programs or where the difference in that, which I think is about $11.2 million.
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. As the honourable member knows, that the sources of funding for schools for school boards in the province, there's two sources. One is from the provincial government and one is from the Met. And so the increased assessment has given 12.2 in terms of the municipal tax. And so that is the differences that the member is seeing. So it has to do with the Met, and so it's 12.2 million because of an increase in the provincial uniform property tax assessments. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Colchester North.
I'm looking at the difference between the forecast and the estimate, and it is $11.2 million less than it was over actuals. That's what I need to have explained. I don't think it's the Met.
The Honourable Member for Colchester North.
I don't believe the difference of $11.2 million in funding to school boards is the Met.
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you. The difference in that is when we put 73 teachers in I think it's the 1st of October, the end of September. It was the class cap that's in that. Also, that's the difference, along with the increase in the Met that goes in. So the provincial portion is reflected in that. So it's in the forecast, what you're seeing was from the class cap when we changed when we put 73 teachers in the classroom. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Colchester North.
So could I read into that then that since the estimate for next year is 11.2 million less, that we will not need those teachers next year?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much. When we did the work of the budget this year, we have included the class cap in the funding formula. So it's the class cap is in the formula, so therefore the primary to grade 3 classes have that included. So I cannot answer if teachers that were hired in the school system, the 73 were hired, what their positions will look like next year, because school boards have received their budget. We've increased the budget this year for special education. We ran it through the HOG formula to make sure that all of the things that school boards need to have funded, and that money is now provided, that target funding is provided to our school boards. So that is the difference in terms of our provincial portion. This has been offset by the increase in the Met this year. Thank you.
The honourable member for Colchester North.
Thank you. Let's continue on page 7.3. We have a forecast, which would be your actuals, of $1.093 billion. And we have an estimate of $1.082 billion. That translates into a cut of $11.2 million. Would that be correct?
The honourable minister.
No.
The honourable member for Colchester North.
Perhaps the minister could explain then what it does reflect.
The honourable minister.
This is a reduction in the provincial grant because of the increase of the Met. Thank you.
The honourable member for Colchester North.
If you look at the top of the page, to me it says it's the funding that goes to our public school system. And the difference is $11.2 million over what it actually cost last year. Would that be correct?
The honourable minister.
So our funding sources are the province of Nova Scotia and the municipal education tax. So last year, the province's funding for our school boards was, oh my goodness, a lot of money here. It's $841,572,200, and this year is for the provinces $8,332,600. I'm sorry I'm saying this. You know, I did learn this in school and remember on how to do it. I can do it better backwards. The municipal education tax last year was $202,710. I can't even say this anymore. So the increase is under the municipal education tax, and the total going out to our school boards has increased in our estimate for next year. So there is no reduction in any way, shape, or form for funding for our school boards. We have increased our funding for this year. There is no cut, as the honourable member says. This is the way that school boards have received their funding. They receive the grant from the province, and they also receive the municipal education tax directly from their municipalities. I can't read.
The honourable member for Colchester North.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess I'm concerned about the statement that the minister just said, that there are no reductions to school board funding this year. I'm reading from the 2012-13 funding and the 2013-14 adjustments, which show the Annapolis Valley getting a 3.6% increase, Cape Breton 1.5% decrease, Chignecto 0.10% decrease, CSAP 6.05 increase, Halifax 1.35 increase, South Shore 1.5 decrease, Strait 1.5 decrease, Tri-County 1.1% decrease. My question to the minister is, if 5 school boards are getting less money, how can we say that there are no reductions to school board funding?
The honourable minister.
As I said, there is no reduction to school board funding in the province. We have, in the Annapolis Valley, we have a change in their, they will be receiving more. This ran through the HOG formula. We are making sure that we're funding our students appropriately. Not only are we making sure that they're captured in the model, but the model is also was worked very carefully to give school boards flexibility. Within the formula, we see that Annapolis Valley is receiving over $1 million more funding, where the Cape Breton sorry, the adjustment is 400. I made a mistake there, sorry. In Cape Breton, the actual, if we ran through the formula, they would have been reduced over $9 million. So therefore, we're supplementing that, so the reduction is capped at 1.5. As I mentioned yesterday, there is a very challenging situation in Cape Breton with the extreme declining enrollment in Cape Breton. Chignecto had a small decrease in funding. CSAP had an increase in funding by 6% because of increasing enrollment. Halifax received 1.35% more. South Shore and the Strait both were capped at 1.5. They received funding that was based on their students, but we protected them because the declining enrollment exceeded what we considered the cap, which is 1.5. The cap was very carefully crafted to make sure that no permanent teachers would be affected, and Tri-County had a reduction in funding. So overall, we're funding our school boards, but the school boards going through the funding formula we're making sure that they have the funding that they need for the students that they have in the school, and the HOG model was formulated very carefully to make sure that school boards had some flexibility, and we're protecting our boards by making sure we have a cap. But the overall funding, and I will repeat, the overall funding for our school boards has increased from last year. Thank you.
The honourable member for Colchester North.
I'd ask the minister to look at page 7.4. And the early years part of that report, and the 5.5 positions that we've talked about earlier, were talked about earlier today. I'd ask the minister to repeat what those 5.5 positions will be.
The honourable minister.
Thank you, and I'd like to make apology to Mr. Dunn. He was looking for that, and I actually had it on my desk, so I make apologies for that. In the early years, we have one FTE coming from the Department of Community Services. We have an FTE coming from Health. We have I'm looking, is that an acronym here? Okay, we have an FTE approved by Treasury Board, and we have an internal transfer from IT, and we also have an internal transfer from the English Program Services, which add up to 5.5 in the early years. Thank you.
The honourable member for Colchester North.
Thank you. So that looks like we have 2 internal transfers and 3.5 from other departments. Would that be correct?
The honourable minister.
3 internal.
The honourable member for Colchester North.
So is that 3 internal and 2.5 transfer from other departments?
The Honourable Minister.
That's correct. Thank you, and that is correct.
The Honourable Member for Colchester North.
So my question would be, with the transfer of 2.5 FTEs from other departments to education, does the funding come from those departments to education?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you. Yes, and so from community services, the FTE is 85,000, and from health, funded from health is 85,000. And then there was some funding, operational funding that came from Treasury Board. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Colchester North.
So then if I could look at the 5.5 that we're funding on this particular education budget, is that in addition to the one from community services, one from health, and 0.5 from somewhere else?
The Honourable Minister.
They're in this number. The numbers is an inclusive number. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Colchester North.
So if they are coming from those departments, and if their funding is coming with them, then is this double counting them in the 5.5 for funding?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much. So for our budget for our early years, we have salaries and benefits at 549,000. I see that's twice. Is that, yeah. Another line of salaries and benefits, 549,000.1. Travel would be 9,000. Professional services, 316.9. Supplies and services, 7,000. And other on that line would be 4,000. Our operating grants would be 336.9 thousand. Grants and contributions, 300,000. Grants and contributions, 300,000. So to the gross expenses is 1,186,000. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Colchester North.
Thank you for that breakdown. When we're looking at whatever this is supposed to look like, the early years, when people are moving and programs are moving, what programs from community services and health will be moving over to education?
The Honourable Minister. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And the 5.5 FTEs that have been discussed here are the actual people that will be doing the transfer and doing the work for this. This is in a transitional year coming up, and they will be working on what that looks like, how that's going to work. So we're going to be integrating the programs and services. We're going to be building a more collaborative method of making sure that the services are there for our families. So at this point, this is these people are in the department doing that work. So what will evolve in terms of what programs, I just want to reassure Nova Scotians that there's no change in the delivery or any services for any of the services that we provide for our families and for our children. This is a transformation of how we are going to be moving forward. But at this point, it stays the same. Everyone gets the service that they have been getting while the department is working under the leadership of these 5.5 to do the work. There's a lot of work that's being done that I don't think that many Nova Scotians would see on a daily basis, but it's quite a lot of work and dealing with all of the different stakeholders and all of the different programs to make sure that we can find a seamless method of making sure that we are supporting our youngest in our our province and their families.
The honourable member for Colchester North.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The question was what services are coming, and the minister had made a statement earlier this afternoon that all of the services in health and community services would be coming over to education. So my question was, what are those services?
The honourable minister.
We have over 200 programs and services available to our children and our families across the province. And I know that what we're working on is building an integrated system that's going to improve the service and the programs to our children. So if it's a service that is for our children, that is what's going to be integrated under the umbrella of the early years, under our early childhood development. So I am not the health minister or the community services minister to know exactly all the names of all the different programs that we have. I know the programs that we have in education, but the project, the vision is to make sure that we are building an integrated system to benefit our children from the time that they are born till the time they finish school and beyond. Thank you.
The honourable member for Colchester North.
Thank you. Yesterday I mentioned the list of salaried employees from the department, and the difference in the numbers was quite significant. And I know staff were going to go check that, so perhaps I will repeat the question. We have 70 fewer employees listed on this year's report than last, so could somebody explain that?
The honourable minister.
Thank you. As the member would remember, there was a change in departments, and the advanced education folks were on the previous list, and they've moved over to labor and advanced education, and also the library branch, which was under education, has moved over to communities, cultures, and heritage. So that's reflecting the difference in the numbers, and I know that yesterday even I was taken back, but what was reflected in the lists of salaried employees were advanced education and also the library branch, which are now in 2 other departments. Thank you.
The honourable member for Colchester North.
Thank you, and thanks for the explanation, because it was difficult to understand when you're looking at lists of names what had happened to some of those people. I would like to ask a couple of questions from that document, if you have it. And I noticed that there are names on the travel allowances that are not on the list of employees. Perhaps you could explain that.
The honourable minister.
Thank you very much. Not everybody would be a salaried employee under the department. It could be a person who is seconded, who is doing work on the behalf of the department, and their travel expenses would definitely be covered by the department because they're doing department work, but their salary is actually still paid for by their school board as a secondment works. It's an exchange of funds, but so they really, they're seconded. So we have, what would be reflected in our list would be a seconded, a person who's seconded, so wouldn't be on the department's list, but definitely does do the good work of the department and is funded by the department.
The honourable member for Colchester North.
So if we look at secondments on page 121, and there are 3 boards where there are secondments have come from 3 different boards, I would take from that. Could the minister confirm how many secondments from each of those 3 boards?
The honourable minister.
There will be 3 secondments in total in the coming year.
The honourable member for Colchester North. Thank you. I'm referring to the document that has the list of employees. It was last year's list. It's not this year's. is 1213's list.
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much. It looks as if what I will have to do is take that question and provide the information at a later date. We don't have that information with us today. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Colchester North.
Thank you. When I'm looking through the list of secondments, there are, as I say, 3 boards that are identified with secondments. Last year, I believe there were 4 boards that had secondments identified. My question was, we're looking at Halifax Regional Board, secondment salaries of $448,000. My question would be, how many secondments would that have been?
Remind the Honourable Minister.
Thank you. I hope you don't mind, but I'm going to clarify. We have, for our fiscal year 2011-12, as a supplement to the public accounts, which is the information that we're using, we do not have we do not have the document that the honourable member is using at this time. So I just want to clarify that we're working from the supplement to the public accounts document, and that is where we had the list for travel that I answered and the list of funded employees and that I answered the question. So I'm just clarifying, you have a different document that you're getting information from?
The Honourable Member for Colchester North with 20 seconds remaining.
I have the provincial document that you were referring to. You went back and checked the difference in the numbers. The difference was, I think, 70 employees, and you explained to me that that was because libraries, people from libraries had moved and people from labor workforce. So
Order,
I
please.
believe you.
The time allotted to the official opposition has expired. Is there a response from the Minister on that? No, no response. There was no response required on that, I'm assuming. The Honourable Minister.
The response is that we always use the supplement to the public accounts in the year in arrears, which is 11-12. So I think that there might be some misunderstanding to, we're working from the document 11-12. I did answer the question she asked of why the discrepancy based on the information that I received in the supplement to the public accounts here, 11-12.
The Honourable Member for Cape Breton North.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll go to page 7.7 again, Madam Minister, and I just want to ask, on that page there are about 10 full-time equivalent positions that are empty. I just want to know how long those positions were empty during the last year.
God, how does Elfie fit in this chair? Not easily.
I recognize the Minister of Education and Early Childhood Development.
Oh, thank you very much, and nice to see you, Mr. Chair. The question that the honourable member asked, we can calculate and we can get that information, but right now it would be a very lengthy process. I would have to do some math on each of these budget lines. So what I think I'll do is just clarify the question that you're looking, how long were positions vacant? And I will ask staff to tabulate all of this information and get that back to you, as opposed to trying to take the time to maneuver through this document on the floor. Thank you.
Recognize the member for Cape Breton North.
I'm going to go back to the amortization of equipment. If the expenses are decreasing as quickly as they are, what we talked about earlier, is the equipment in our schools starting to fall below their useful life because of the quick decrease in their amortization period?
Minister of Education.
Thank you. There is a formula based on amortization. So if it's over a 10-year period, it's a percentage each and every year that is taken into consideration. After the end of a 10-year, and I'm using 10 years as a general, I think that's the general accounting number that they use. After that, the amortization is less because it's been captured in the first 10 years. So that is the accounting piece of around amortization. But in terms of I think the concern that I'm hearing from the member opposite is, are things falling apart in our schools? Do we have the appropriate desks, chairs, and computers and in our school system? And because of declining enrollment, we've actually ended up with a surplus of desks, chairs, bookshelves. And I know that what we do is make sure that they go to areas where if another school needs something that they can use them. But as you do know, that because of declining enrollment and school boards are able to use different things in different schools, moving things around. I have not been in a school that I've seen any problem with any of the equipment and or the desks. But if there are problems that school boards or schools are facing, they have a procedure in which the principal would write a request to the school board, and then the school board would look at that. Thank you. And so in terms of amortization, what happened was that that big chunk that the member saw that looked like quite dramatic is that there was a movement of advanced education and NSCC that used to be in the Department of Education. They moved over, so it looks like a dramatic drop when actually it was a department that part of the department left over to advanced education, labor and advanced education. So I think that in every department the school board, in every department, we make sure that employees have the appropriate desks and chairs that they need, and schools and school boards do the same thing. So when we also have a surplus of materials within our system too, that we can move around from one school board to another, because if a school board doesn't need it anymore, then they give it to the central government storage area. And I know that at that point, if a government office doesn't need it, that's the first place that the Department of Education, by the way, if we've needed any desks or chairs in the department, the first place we go to is the surplus before ever considering purchasing anything. And then I know that I think it's twice a year that the public can come in and purchase the surplus. Thank you.
Recognize the member for Cape Breton North.
And maybe this is a question that may not be able to answer, but how much equipment and technology may be in use in the system now, but that has been, I guess, written off or reached the end of its amortization period?
Minister of Education and Early Childhood Development.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And you're right, I can't answer that, but I do know one thing, that there is a program that we have within government. It's run through the finance department, that we have businesses and sometimes individuals, when they are changing their computers at home, or in their, especially there's office refreshes, they'll bring that material to the equipment to the department, and there are people within the Department of Education that will refresh that. Computer systems, there's lots of, it's not necessarily you would use all of it, but the parts and pieces. So, and then the company and or individuals that have donated that, it's fairly evaluated, assessed, and the person that does do that gets an income tax receipt for their donation. And so many of our schools benefit from computers that have a lot of useful life left. And so there are many ways that we can get equipment, computers into our schools, and I think that this program, it has a name. It's got a, it's a type of a recycling program, but it's been really good. We've ended up with an awful lot of materials for our technology for our people in our schools, and also the businesses are able to benefit from getting an income tax receipt.
Recognize the member for Cape Breton North.
In conjunction with that last question, could we get a copy of the state of our equipment with a breakdown of where on average some of it is in the 10-year amortization period over the last 10 years? Yeah.
Minister of Education and Early Childhood Development.
Thank you very much. Now, I just want to make sure before I ask for staff to do this work. It's a very big system. We have over 400 schools, so I need to know, are you asking for desks, chairs, computers, the technology in our schools, or you're looking at what's in technology in schools? So that would be a question that we would need to ask the boards, and the boards would have an inventory, which would be ever changing, especially around technology, would be ever changing. And so all I can do with your request at this point, the honourable member, would be to make a request, and I'm just clarifying, around technology in our schools. Thank you.
Recognize the member for Cape Breton North.
And I only have a few questions left, and I don't think they're getting much easier, but could you tell me what the costing forecast the equipment need due to the depreciation of current equipment will be over the next 5 years?
Minister of Education and Early Childhood Development.
Thank you very much. That is not a question I can answer at this time. Thank you.
Member for Cape Breton North.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, thank you. On page 7.4, we're under early childhood education again, their development. I want to ask, of the 1.1 million, how much of that money is devoted to salaries, programs, administration, communications, and/or policy advancement?
Minister of Education and Early Childhood Development.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The $1.2 million breaks down in this way. Line items are salaries and benefits, $549,000.1. Salaries and benefit, $549,000.1. We have budgeted $9,000 for travel. For professional services, $316,000.9. Supplies and services budgeted $7,000. Under a line item other would be $4,000. The operating costs are $336,000.9. Grants and contributions, $300,000. Grants and contributions, $300,000. So the line item, the program expenses actually are $1,186,000. We just rounded it up to 1.2. It's so close that it just makes it easier. Thank you.
Member for Cape Breton North.
And I know we're expecting an announcement tomorrow on our early childhood educators, and the speculation is they may be going to grade 4-year-olds going into the classroom system. And I guess the question I'm going to ask is, if we go that route, will the early educators' salaries be brought up in line with public school teacher salaries?
Minister. Minister of Education and Early Childhood Development.
Thank you. That's not a question I can answer at this time, but I definitely appreciate the intent behind that question. But thank you very much for the opportunity. Yes, and tomorrow we are looking forward to providing more information around our early years. Thank you.
Recognize the member for Cape Breton North.
And I'd just like to thank the Minister and her two assistants, Mr. Dunn and Mr. Lowe, for their patience and their appreciation for their help with answering those questions. Thank you.
I recognize the member for Bedford Birch Cove.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just actually like to take a few minutes to ask the Minister a few questions about some schools in my riding. First of all, it was mentioned in the speech from the throne that there would be a new school coming in for Bedford. I'm assuming that is the new high school that was announced in 2009 by the previous government. Is that correct?
Recognize the Minister of Education and Early Childhood Development.
The Bedford School has been built under our government, and it's a beautiful building, and it's my understanding that we'll be opening for this fall. Am I correct? Yes, so that is the speech from the throne. Opening a school would be the Bedford School, which is, I know that you I heard your comments the other day that you were hoping it would be more than that, but it is a beautiful school, and I know that you as a member are very proud of that school, and it's going to be a wonderful place of learning for our young people.
Recognize the member for Bedford Birch Cove.
Thank you, Minister, for clarifying that. I was pretty sure that was the school that was being referred to, but I just wanted to check in case there was some gift there that I didn't know about. And my understanding is that the school is in fact on time and on budget and all of that. In terms of, so once the students from Charles P. Allen move into the New Bedford High School, which will be called Charles P. Allen, then we have an empty school on Rocky Lake Drive, the old Charles P. Allen building. And my understanding is, well, not my understanding, the plan is to take the students from Bedford Junior High, which is also on Rocky Lake Drive, and which is a 50-year-old building that has seen better days, and to take those students, put them in the old Charles P. Allen building, along with the students from grades 7, 8, and 9 from Bedford South. They've just gone through a rather contentious boundary review about that. They will join together and go to Charles P. Allen. I'm just wondering if there are any renovations slated for the old Charles P. Allen prior to the move-in of the junior high students.
Recognize the Minister of Education and Early Childhood Development.
Thank you very much. It has not been submitted at this point, and if it is a priority for the board, it would be submitted under their capital asks. Thank you.
Recognize the member for Bedford Birch Cove.
Okay, well, since it hasn't been submitted, I would like to bring to the minister's attention there is no elevator at Charles P. Allen School. So for students who are on crutches or who are on wheelchairs, there is a series of ramps, but it's quite to get from the bottom floor up to the third floor is quite a hike, and it's quite a long ramp, so I wanted to bring that to her attention. I know there are other issues there that the school advisory committee has been working on, but that was, the big one that had been mentioned to me previously. There are also a number of issues at a number of schools throughout my riding that I would, first of all, Waverly Road School, there was a boundary review last year for that school. And the gist of it was that all the students from that school were moved from Waverly Road to Basin View, which is a lovely newer school. Those students were taken out of Waverly Road. There were no students, no teachers at Waverly Road this year, and it went on the closure list, I think last month, for HRSB. Is that, so do you have any objection to them closing that school where there are no students in it right now?
I recognize the Minister of Education and Early Childhood Development.
And thank you. I'm not familiar with all of the different areas and all of the different schools and boundaries, and I can tell you about my own constituency, as we all can, which is a good thing. What I want to say is, to answer the question, Dr. Lowe just informed me about a motion that was made at their board. I really feel that taking another approach with the school review process, where I've asked for boards to suspend the process at this point and to delay any closures of decisions that were made in the current year. That would not impact on the motion that the school board made on an empty school. That is nothing to do with a school review process. I think they're working through the process of how that looks. So I think that if we would have had a school review process that would have had that encapsulated in the case of a school that emptied out for, I mean, we did have a case 2 years ago where a school actually did empty out. People didn't come to the school, and it was down in the South Shore, I remember. So what happens, because the legislation says it needs to be reviewed, but there's no one there. So we'll get that. I know the board will figure that particular thing out, but I think that this just highlights the importance of having a review process put in place, that a school board wouldn't be left in a situation going, well, what shall we do here, and having to seek legal opinion to find out. Personally, if this is a school that has that there are no students there, it doesn't make any sense to me where they would need to have a review process before closing it. But since we have a suspension on this, I've asked for a suspension so we can look at a better way forward on that. That is something that I know that Dr. Lowe will work with the boards around. And personally, if that is something the board feels is inappropriate, I support the board in that decision.
Recognize the member for Bedford Birch Cove.
That is not the only school where that is going to happen, because just down the road from Waverly Road School is Bedford Junior High, which, if those junior high students and the Bedford South students join together and go to the old Charles P. Allen this fall, that school will in fact be empty. And so, this is another case where we would have a school sitting empty, not as the result of a school closure, but as a result of boundary review. And I actually did get a letter from a parent the other day who said, who wanted to know whether this was a way for boards to skirt around the contentious issue of a school closure, if they could use boundary reviews to get around that whole process. I'm wondering if you could speak to that.
Minister of Education and Early Childhood Development.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I think that this highlights the need for a school review process that takes many considerations into place. And so I'm not familiar with this situation, and I don't want to speak to it, but I would like to speak over at a higher level in that the school review process obviously has caused communities, families, and school boards a great deal of distress over the last 2 years and beyond. I mean, I think it's been contentious all along. I know that we did try to clarify it, adding more input for families, for communities. It still was adversarial, so what I'm saying is that in the move forward, all of these things need to be taken into consideration around a review, and so that we can work collaboratively with the community, that it's in best interest of children, because as you've heard me say many times, the school review process is in place to make sure that the public education of the child can be delivered, for the child can be delivered appropriately, so it's fair and equitable for everyone in the province. Coming out of school review processes, I know in many cases, especially in my own area, it has created enhancements in the school. The addition of technology, you know, the schools have been rewired. You made a comment about accessibility. Schools have been made more accessible. They've been actually old schools, and I know that the Mr. Chair will know that we have had many schools in the Annapolis Valley built all exactly the same at the same time. Nowadays, because of renovations, you would think that it's a brand new school. So a review process can also lead to enhancing the school. But as I've asked the boards to suspend, I'm looking forward to working with them, with other departments across government, working with Ray Ivany's commission. Ray's going around, and his commission is doing a lot of work, getting that input on how we can look at a school in a more holistic way. So I think that brings into I think that encapsulates the concern that the board has, and maybe the person that wrote to you, that as we move forward, we can make sure that it's very clear for the boards on procedures.
Recognize the member for Bedford Birch Cove.
It was interesting, you know, we were discussing accessibility, and I do have a number of schools in my riding that are not particularly accessible because they were built a number of years ago. And I would like to note, for example, that Fort Sackville School, which is a lovely little school, my children all went to that school, and it only goes up to, I think, grade 2 now, and but there's no gym in it. And there are stairs, you know, not a lot of stairs, but there are stairs in it, and that does make life difficult for some people. From there, the children go up to Eaglewood Elementary. There is no elevator, and it's a 2-floor school. So when my son went there, French immersion was on the 2nd floor. But if you can't get upstairs, you know, it makes it tough. The library is on the 2nd floor, so you can't get it up. You can't get upstairs to reach the library. So I did want to mention that to the minister. The other thing is, I've received conflicting reports from various places about the capital requests, when boards were putting in capital requests. Has that in fact happened?
Recognize the Minister of Education and Early Childhood Development.
It is my understanding that the boards have, well, we've made the request, and it's my understanding that boards are sending their requests to the department, but they're not due until the end of this month. So I think due, or we won't be reviewing them till, is it due April the 30th? Are they due? Oh. They're due to the office on April the 30th, so that's the timeline. So that, yes, they did, the request has already gone out. And so I'm sure that, I don't know, but I'm sure that maybe some boards might even have theirs in. It's hard to say.
Recognize the member for Bedford Birch Cove.
And is that for just renovations, or is that for also new school buildings? Sorry, is that just for new buildings, or is it for renovations as well?
Minister of Education.
It's for both. It's what school boards need and their priorities for schools. Thanks.
The member for Bedford Birch Cove.
Thank you. So since I have the minister here, I might just make a few pitches, you know, mentioning Fort Sackville and Eaglewood. The plan, the last time I checked, was in fact to do a renovation at Eaglewood Elementary to make the building bigger and more accessible. I've also, I know the minister and I have met up at Cole Grosvenor Wentworth Park School, which has some renovation needs, including roofing and some ceilings and flooring, et cetera, and I have written to the minister about that. And the other thing that my understanding is that the board will be requesting is a new high school for the Ravines area, because the new Bedford High School, which will open this fall in 2013, will in fact was built for 1,200 students and will open with about 1,300. So according to population projections by 2018, we're expecting that school to be well overcrowded and we'll need another one. So I just thought I'd put the plug in for the new Ravines High School. And with that, I would like to pass questioning over to my colleague, the member for Richmond. Thank you.
I recognize the member for Richmond.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Madam Minister, tonight the Strait Regional School Board will be meeting, and as part of their meeting there's going to be a motion introduced by the school board member for West Richmond requesting that the school board's decision to close the West Richmond Education Centre and the Heatherton School be revisited and be reversed. And I'm just curious whether the Minister of Education would be supportive in light of her request made to school boards earlier last week to see that both those schools remain open.
Recognize the Minister of Education and Early Childhood Development.
Thank you very much. I want to be very clear that the request that I made of the school boards was to suspend the process, the school review process for the coming year, and to delay the school closures that were made during the current year. That is the request that I made of the school boards.
I recognize the member for Richmond.
So I'm wondering if the minister could clarify, does that mean it would apply to schools that were voted for closure in 2011, 2012, when she says stop the process now, plus go back and reverse the process that was started before? I'm wondering if the minister could clarify exactly what date she's referring to.
Recognize the Minister of Education and Early Childhood Development.
Thank you very much. And you know, I really feel that there's been some miscommunication because there were some media reports that put out some incorrect dates in some of the media, which I think has made this a little bit difficult for members of the school boards and the general public. The decisions were only for decisions for school closure made in this current year. So decisions that were made by March the 31st of this year, decisions made in this current year. That was the request that I made. It didn't encapsulate any other any other requests. So if a school is going to be closed in September based on a decision made 3 years ago, that still stands.
Recognize the member for Richmond.
I'm wondering if the minister could clarify with the West Richmond Education Centre, the vote to close that school took place last year, with the school slated for closure in June of this year. So I'm wondering if the minister could clarify, does West Richmond Education Centre fall under the request that she made to school boards?
Recognize the Minister of Education and Early Childhood Development.
No, it doesn't.
Recognize the member for Richmond.
So I'm a bit confused. When you say decision made this year, okay, this current year. So your announcement was last week. So you're basically talking about January 1st, 2013 to when you made your announcement. You're saying that it's only for decisions that were made during that time frame? Is that correct?
I recognize the Minister of Education and Early Childhood Development.
The school review process goes from October to March the 31st. I think I've got my timelines there. So decisions that were made October 2012 to March 31st, 2013, this is what I call the current school year, decisions were to be delayed. That request that was to be delayed. So it doesn't capture any other decisions that were made outside of that timeline.
Recognize the member for Richmond.
I'm just curious, how does the minister pick the arbitrary date of October 2012 when you've stood in this House and you've told Nova Scotians that the review process was flawed, that it pitted community against community, it was very divisive? How is it that you can now tell the parents, the students, and the administration of West Richmond Education Centre, sorry, but you're a couple of months off of the October date, even though it was a flawed process? I acknowledge that now. It was flawed from the time we made amendments in 2010. How can the minister possibly tell this community, sorry, you're off by a couple of months, because any decision made prior to October 2012, even though the school's only slated for closure in June of 2013, does not apply?
Recognize the Minister of Education and Early Childhood Development.
Thank you very much. The school review process, as the honourable member knows, sits with the school board, and the Minister of Education can only make a request. So I made it around this school year, this current school year, and anything upcoming. I've asked the school board to do a suspension and a delay. I have heard back from many people in the community, and I've heard back from school boards that they felt that this process was extremely adversarial and was pitting community against community and school board against community, and it just wasn't working. So I've made the request for them to suspend it. One of the things that I did hear in a lot of, and I know all of us through media reports have heard that many of the communities came to the school review process, the meetings, with ideas around a community school, a hub model. And at this point, there's no criteria, there's no protocol, there's no way that the community group can work with the school board at this point, because it's in an area that the school board really doesn't have jurisdiction in terms of what commercial entity could the school could be used for. We've had many good ideas. Each community has a different idea, and I feel that as we move forward through a new process, that we can find a way to work with communities and have the criteria protocols put in place so that we can look at alternate uses of schools, using the schools in other ways, and also a community hub model. I know that working with the community, I think that we can enhance how we use our schools. But at this point, there's no protocol, there's no criteria. Schools that have done it, I know that there's a number of small schools that have made some changes over the years. But in terms of what communities were asking for and asking the school boards, I know that down in Chignecto, they were asking the school board, I think for 2 different schools, that giving them some time to work on a model for a community school or a hub model. And I would like to see, through a review process, that we can work with other departments to enhance it, so that we can actually work together with communities and with other departments, so that we can see what we can do in our smaller schools, especially in our rural areas. Thank you.
Recognize the member for Richmond.
So I'm just advised now that the final vote on the West Richmond Education Centre was made in March 2012. It was done so under what the minister has described as a flawed process. A process that was divisive. The minister knows that many members, many parents, students, administrators attempted to contact the minister. She refused to respond to any of their concerns until after the vote was actually taken. Is it safe to say that the minister's and the government's response to the parents, students, and the entire community impacted by West Richmond Education Centre is too bad, you're out of luck? Even though it was a flawed process, the vote was before the arbitrary date of October that you've chosen, and that they do not have the support of the Minister of Education to try to keep their school open.
I recognize the the Minister of Education and Early Childhood Development.
Thank you very much. I just want to be very clear that the terminology that the member opposite is using on how I describe the process, I did not use myself. I said the process was adversarial and not meeting the needs of our communities. I did not use the term flawed in at all in any of my media. I've used the term problematic, and I've used the term problematic and adversarial, and I think that all members here recognize when a school review process is in place that it does. The outcome is to make sure that our children benefit, and it has turned into very adversarial, confrontational, very hard. I'm hearing the word heart-wrenching process. The situations that any community has with their school and their connection with the school is very strong. And I am not, as minister, legislative, not allowed to get involved in the process. So I was following appropriate protocol and appropriate legislative authority. And unfortunately, the message is that I would not meet with them. Well, I could not because I could not interfere. I have still, I'm being criticized by the member opposite for actually now interfering in a process which has been adversarial, trying to put a stop to moving forward in another year of people, community pitting against community and school board members so we can work through a better process. So I'm hoping that the members of your constituency, the West Richmond School, and you mentioned Heatherton School, that they definitely will have some input on ways to move forward in terms of a process that can be much more collaborative and work for the community. We need to look at it in a holistic manner. And the member knows that any school board member can put a motion on the floor about any decisions that are made. That is something that any board member in any of their meetings can do, and it's up to the board to look at that decision. You can revisit decisions if there's a motion put towards the school board. But I understand that this has caused some concern for our school boards, but I do feel that even though it was a difficult decision to make, to ask for the suspension, I think that it's to benefit our students to find a better way as we can move forward. If we can find a better way of looking at schools and how can we do a school review so that the best outcome is there for our student as opposed to having students and their families so disrupted and concerned. Thank you.
I recognize the member for Richmond.
So basically the minister's statement is that the review process wasn't flawed, it was just adversarial and problematic. So for any parent that's going to sit there and think that there's real difference between those terms, I don't think you're going to find any. And it's interesting that the minister said that I've accused her of interfering in the process. My questions all along have been asking you what is going to happen to West Richmond Education Centre. That's been my question. And it's interesting because when I said earlier how the parents, the students, and community members tried to contact the Minister of Education, her response was, I didn't reply to any of them because I couldn't interfere. You said you couldn't interfere as minister. They didn't ask you to interfere. They asked you to listen. They asked you to hear their concerns. They asked you to hear their ideas. They asked you to hear what they thought was flawed about the program. They asked you to hear what it was going to do to their community, what they thought it was going to do to their kids. And with all due respect, you turned a blind eye by saying, I can't interfere. They didn't ask you to interfere. They asked you to listen. And today your response is very clear that you did not listen. Now you're coming after the fact and saying that, I couldn't interfere, which is why I did not respond. Minister, that's not good enough. And for these parents, they're now being told, because the decision was in March, because it was before October 2012, that under the rules that you've put in place, the requests that you've made, that they really have no option. So I have to ask the minister again, why is it that knowing all of the flaws that was in the system, the parents that want to communicate to them, why would she have not responded to those?
Order. I recognize the member for Halifax Citadel, Sable Island.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It has been a long-standing practice to speak through the chair to a witness and not to berate and harass the witness, and I would ask the member to speak through the chair. Thank you.
I recognize the member for Richmond.
Well, I'm going to say the same thing to the Minister of Community Cultures and Heritage, which I'd said, I think it was back in 1999 when I was asking questions to then Minister of Health, Jane Purvis, and I remember Jamie Muir and Angus McIsaac had gotten up on similar types of points, and as I said to them then, I don't think Minister Purvis needed any of the men to defend her, and I'll say right now that I don't think the Minister of Education needs the Minister of Communities, Culture and Heritage to defend her either. I think she's quite capable of doing that herself. I think I've asked her reasonable questions and she's given me the best responses up to date. So with all due respect, when it comes to an issue talking about parents and talking about the education in Richmond County, I don't need any lecture, any direction from the Minister of Communities, Culture and Heritage here in this House. So I go back to my point again. The parents wanted you to listen. They wanted you to hear what was flawed in the process, what they felt was not properly addressing it. Will the minister advise why she did not respond to the parents?
Order. I recognize the member for Halifax Citadel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It is the rules of the House that he should speak to the
Yes, I was just going to remind the member. Yeah, thank you, member. And I do remind all who are speaking and to estimates that address the chair. I recognize the member for Richmond.
Will the chair ask the Minister of Education why she did not respond to the concerns raised by the parents, students, and other community members regarding the closure of the West Richmond Education Centre prior to the board's decision to close the school?
I recognize the Minister of Education and Early Childhood Development.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I am finding the accusations a bit unfair because I actually did listen to the members across all Nova Scotia. Every community that has a school that is undergoing a school review process, if they write letters, I do read every single one of them. I get requests on a daily basis to be either in Cape Breton or Yarmouth or Amherst to meet with parent groups. I think I've had 6 invitations this week alone. Unfortunately, I cannot meet with every group that asks, and I do meet with lots of groups. And one of the things that I know that we pride ourselves as government is listening. And I did listen, and I did listen to And actually, I was up in the board, and I listened to the board and the board members that represent that area. I have read every letter. I have not been able to meet with every group that asks me for a meeting. That is something I would like to do, but there are over 400 schools in the province and home and schools, SACs. I have, invite me all the time. And it's not that I was in any way meaning to be and never will be disrespectful to any community member or any community group or any group of parents or children associated with anything that's happening in our school system. I understand that the process is extremely heart-wrenching and that the people that are having their school reviewed and there's changes being made definitely are very concerned and upset. Never, ever would I have ever been disrespectful to any member. I did read every one of the letters and emails that came in, and it is my hope that that all of those people recognize that they did get a response, and the response would be the same for any of the school review processes that it was sitting with the hands of the board. Now I have stepped in and have asked to make sure that the process works as well as it possibly can. I have heard from parents, I have heard from the school boards, I have heard from community groups. I'm hearing from businesses too around the school closure, the school review process. The school review process was never intended to look at a school for closure. It's a school review process, and I think that I'm going to quote one of the school board members from Halifax that it was in the Chronicle Herald. The school board member made a quote, and that was reported in the Herald. As you know, sometimes that they might not be accurate, but it says, unfortunately, the school review process is the tool we have to get the information that we need to find out about our school and our community. Obviously, we can see from what happened this year in particular that the school board wasn't able to take other considerations under the school review process. So it is my hope that the school boards, the request that I made to suspend it and to look at this. So the idea of this is if they grant my request to suspend, that the first thing that we will be doing after after the House rises, Mr. Chair, is that I want to meet with the board superintendents and, well, actually, I apologize, that's wrong. I want to meet with every board. And in my mind, I'm looking at, I would meet with the boards in a regional way. I would look at the Cape Breton and Antigonish area for one meeting, probably one in Halifax and maybe one in the Valley, so that school board members don't have to drive too far. But any member that's interested in looking at the process, so I can glean as much information from the school board members of what way we can move forward in a positive way, because they've gone through this process. We tweaked it 2 years ago. It ran through the model that we had in place. Now, the second year, we see that it obviously that it was problematic, and we didn't get it where we needed it to get it. So after I meet with the school board members, and hear what they have to say, then it's what will happen is my wish. It's what my desire will be to strike a interdepartmental committee, bringing in justice and health and Service Nova Scotia Municipal Relations and UNSM. Now, interestingly enough, Mr. Chair, UNSM has a big stake in schools. Of course, as you know, our municipalities are one of our funding sources for our schools. And in many cases, as you know, when a school is slated for closure and closes, in some areas of the province, the municipalities can hardly wait to get that school vacated so that they can use the property in another way. But in other areas of the province, it becomes an extreme liability. And we did hear from one of the former members, Mayor Don Down, that it's causing undue hardship in the South Shore. So we're going to strike this committee, intergovernmental. We're also going to have UNSM. And you know, it's really interesting too, because I know that our Premier submitted legislation back in 2006, which actually talks about striking an interdepartmental committee to look at the school review process back in 2006. So this is something that's that has been discussed, I'm sure, on the this has been discussed on the floor of this House. So and then we would have that committee meet with Ray Ivany and the Commission. Now, Ray won't have a complete report at that point, but he definitely will have an interim report, and he will have met with every community across Nova Scotia, taking the information. And now I want to say very clearly that Ray Ivany and the Commission are not going around getting information about schools, but it's coming up in the conversations that people are bringing forward. So what we're looking at is getting input from the Commission, what communities are saying about schools, and after hearing all of that information, then we're going to, I'm asking for a discussion paper. I feel that it's important to have a discussion paper so that people in Nova Scotia have a springboard to work from. Because I know that there are many groups. I'm getting a lot of information. I'm getting full abstracts, full reports, I'm getting, I actually got an email this morning when I woke up. I opened up my email account, and there was a person in Australia working on exactly the same problem in Australia that we're having here in Nova Scotia, and offered support on that. So I'm getting a lot of people that feel that they can be part of this, of moving forward appropriately. But if we have a discussion paper, because I think there's so many people with so many ideas, it would be hard to bring them all together. But if we have a discussion paper as a springboard, put this out for people in Nova Scotia to read, and then after they have the opportunity to read it, reflect, I am looking at the submissions back to the department from community groups, from individuals. I don't know what it's going to look like when we get that discussion paper out. It might mean coming from the committee that we feel that we might actually go travel around the province and listen to people right in a room. We might just have submissions put in through the traditional manner, which would, be electronic or through Canada Post. But I am looking at hearing from every single person in the province that has an interest in what we can do to look forward to our school review process benefiting our communities and our students, as opposed to it being problematic and adversarial. As I've said, I'm looking forward to the communities that have gone through school closure, that they can offer their suggestions on how it would have looked for them if another process would have been in place, and make the suggestions on what that would look like. I don't have any preconceived notion at this point to what the school review process is going to look like at the end of the day, because this is something that needs to be decided upon by the research and by the intergovernmental committee, and also by Nova Scotians. But I know, and I have a great deal of faith that we can move forward in a much more positive way. I know that the community groups that came forward with plans, one of the members of the community group we met with in the department to look to see if the plan was viable. And I want to tell you right now that some of those community groups worked a very long time. They struck a committee. They went out to businesses. They looked at what they could do in the school, and they put together a really, really good plan. Now, the problem is that you can bring a plan forward, but a school board, their mandate is not a mandate to implement a plan in that way. It really needs to be looked at with TIR and with injustice. We can move forward with this with the expertise from all of the other departments, and that is why I say I have no preconceived notion to what it looks like. But I have a hope that at the end of the day, when a community group comes forward and said, "This is a school that's really valuable in our community, and we want to work with the school board," that we have a mechanism in place, that the school board has, it might be a liaison person with government, I don't know what it's going to look like, but that they can take that plan and actually implement it. Because at this point, I know we have community groups, I know in the Chignecto area that are working on plans, but there's no criteria in place. For example, if at the end of the day they worked really hard and they worked with a local business person and they wanted to put, for example, a restaurant in a school, that might work in one community and might not work in another, but there's considerations that we need to look at. The infrastructure, we have to look at first and foremost the safety of our children. Whatever we use our schools for, the focus is what's best for the child in the school. So at the end of the day, some of our schools in Nova Scotia are not going to be remaining open. So we need to have that very clearly clarified, because we get to a capacity, and I know I'm looking at the chair. The chair and I have been educators for a very long time, and when you get to a school that is too old and is in a situation, I know I heard some things today about accessibility, and that we have so few students that they're not getting what they need in terms of our public school program. Some schools are going to close, so I just want to clarify that. But at the end of the day, I think that by working together with Nova Scotians that we can come up with a review process. Considering the amount of submissions that have been coming into my MLA account and also through the department, there is no lack of passion and expertise in Nova Scotia of ways we can move forward in a much more collaborative, positive way that will benefit our students. So I know that there might be some hard feelings in the Richmond area around their school, and you know, for that I feel very badly, because I want people to know that I do listen. and I want to make sure that people feel that they have been heard. And I hope people in the Richmond area recognize that there was no intent, and ever no intent on my behalf to be disrespectful in any way. And if anyone feels that I was, I apologize for that, because all I was able to do at that point, and looking at the legislation, was say this really is a board matter. I did meet with the board, and I know that the community probably is still very much concerned and hurt around the outcomes of their schools. I'm not 100% sure of if it is set for closure, or if it is going to close, or what the timelines. I'm not sure of that. I know that I get an awful lot of paperwork each day, a lot of letters. And, you know, I really appreciate members of the general public writing to me with their thoughts, and I appreciate getting people's thoughts on what's happening in their school. I've learned about the community in that way, and I appreciate the members from Richmond that did write to me, and I apologize for not being able to drive to Richmond to meet with them. But I do want to say too that the members of Richmond, I did hear today, Mr. Chair, that the honourable member did mention that there was going to be a motion, so that, you know, there is an opportunity, there is a procedure and an opportunity for the for that motion to be discussed again at the school board. It's very important that we recognize that the school boards work really hard on behalf of our students. And I know that every school board in this province wants the best for our students, and they have a difficult mandate in looking at a lot of our schools because of declining enrollment. We only have one school board in the whole province of Nova Scotia that has increased enrollment, and that's CSAP. Even Halifax is struggling with declining enrollment. So it's a situation that we have in Nova Scotia. As I had an email today from Australia, they're having the same pressures in Australia in rural communities. I'm hearing this from ministers across Canada. What the situation we have with declining enrollment is definitely a situation that we are that other jurisdictions are seeing. So I also am quite optimistic that if we have another process in place, I think it would be really good that if we could come up with a model that would be something that would benefit other jurisdictions, because we have the opportunity to put together something in place that other provinces in the other provinces and other jurisdictions would be able to emulate. But I also want to go back to looking at this as intergovernmental committee, that we're not looking at this as a silo, that this is an educational concern. This is a community concern. So we're going to involve TIR. We're going to involve Service Nova Scotia. We're going to involve the municipality. We're going to involve health and wellness, because one of the things that we need to make sure that when we're looking at our schools is the health of our students. We're going to involve all of the areas that have anything to do with schools and community to make sure that our children are going to benefit from this process. It does not benefit any child in this province if their parents are concerned, or if the communities are concerned, or if their teachers are concerned. We want to make sure that people have a process that they feel that they're being heard, and that there is a positive outcome. As I said, not every school is going to not every school in the province is going to stay open. But at the end of the day, if the community feels comfortable that it's in the best interest of their child, then I know that the outcome will be more positive, and communities will feel that not only have they been heard, but they've been able to contribute to this. So, Mr. Chair, I'm just looking at you. I see that there's been some discussion back and forth. Is there going to be a change of chairs, or do I have a few more minutes?
Yes, you do.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. I think that this process that has created a little bit of misunderstanding. I know that early on that the news reporting of this caused some concern, and I mentioned to the member from Richmond that I think that that his community might have been confused about the dates, but I was very clear in the press release and in any of my conversation that I've had with the boards and that I've had with community members. I have asked for a delay of decisions that were made in the current year. And as the honourable member would understand, Mr. Chair, that it's very difficult for governments to continue to go back to correct things that might have been problematic. We have to move forward, and this is a forward-looking process. And the reason why I put a delay on the decisions that were made in the current year is for the very reason that I hope that I was able to articulate are the community members that worked very hard at coming up with plans, and I'm looking at the member from Lunenburg, and I know that one of his constituents worked very hard with the community to come up with a plan for a community hub model, but we don't have any way of being able to support that at this time. We need to look at a new way of moving forward with the ideas coming from the public, so we have some criteria. So I mentioned restaurants. We want to make sure that whatever we do in our criteria, that we wouldn't have a community group say that we would have a restaurant if we've made a determination that wouldn't be good in terms of safety for the children, you know, extra traffic, maybe fire or safety considerations. So we want to make sure that we have the criteria. We saw very, very innovative ideas, but within the criteria that there's enough flexibility, but that we don't have community members taking their valuable time to come up with ideas that will not be able to be used and or sustainable. Because that's the other thing, as you move forward, if you could actually set up a model community hub and it work, but it not be sustainable. We have to make sure that we look at involving the private sector in our schools. We have a school down in the, I think it is the Tri-County area, that actually is leasing out part of their school and has for a very long time without any trouble. I know we have a school in the Halifax Regional School Board that half of the school at this time is being used for a daycare. And they just made some modifications, and a very small community school, is able to be extremely viable and serve the needs of the community. I think there's many, many ways that we can move forward with this hub model, the community model, or alternate use of schools. I do know that the Annapolis Valley Regional School Board is leasing out space for offices for some of their schools. Criteria always being first, of course, that it has to make sure that it doesn't impact on our children in any way. But if we don't have a criteria in place, and if we don't take the time to take a deep breath and stop this process, which I've asked, we're just going to keep spinning year after year and have communities upset and have this being adversarial when a school board and a community want the same thing. And what they want is what's going to be best for their child in the classroom. They want the best possible education. And if we continue to fight with each other, and if we continue to have it adversarial, and as soon as you hear the term school review, immediately people go school closure. And it shouldn't be used in that way. So as we move forward through this process, I will hear back from the boards by April the 30th. And you know, I understand that school boards are concerned that I've put a delay on this. And I understand that some school boards have expressed their concerns about some needed repairs in schools if they're going to operate next year. And I met with the chairs and the boards, mind you, by a teleconference, and reassured them to submit the repairs that were needed through the process. We have an envelope to do that, so they should not have a financial hardship around the repair of the school. So as we move forward through this process, I'll hear back from the boards. I'm optimistic. I feel that this is, we're on the edge of something that can be quite exciting, as I said, that can be a model that other jurisdictions are getting. We're not alone in this. And we'll also look at it to see what other jurisdictions are doing. But from the look of it and from the amount of email and documentation that's come into into the office, it looks as if no one has really solved this problem yet. So I'm looking at the people in Nova Scotia to work together on this as we move forward. When I hear back from the school boards, because as I said, and I will say it again, we all want the same things. We have elected our school boards to work on behalf of our students. We have parents that want nothing but the best for their children. We have communities that want nothing but the best for our future citizens in our society. Everyone wants the same thing here. So I've asked for a suspension so that we can take a deep breath. We need to look at a process that has Nova Scotians working together instead of Nova Scotians working against each other. And so I want to say that the honourable member, I definitely understand his concern. I know each one of us as members of the Legislative Assembly have a deep connection to our constituencies and a deeper connection to the people in our constituencies. And there is nothing more important in our constituencies the health and well-being of our children. Our children from the time that they're born until the time that we let them go off into the world, our responsibility and our passion. And so I definitely understand the member's concerns for his community, and I admire him for standing up for them, but I also would like to say that I am disappointed that he felt that he needed to accuse me of not being respectful to the community, because I have always prided on myself as being as respectful in my demeanor on the floor and in the community my whole entire life. It's the way I live, and I am concerned that he would say that I was disrespectful and dismissive of members of his community. I know the members of his community are hardworking individuals, want nothing but the best for their students. I don't know all the particulars of the timelines for the school in his community, but I know that the people in his community love their children and love their community. And I know that there is a motion on the floor this evening. We'll have to see what the outcome of that is. I know that by asking for this suspension has caused a great deal of buzz in the community, and I know that it wasn't a popular decision for some people because they didn't feel it was far-reaching. Also, a number of people, as I heard, have interfered in a process. It is a process that isn't working, and I feel that it's incumbent upon us as government to ask for a pause so that we can make sure that the outcome of this benefits our children. So, Mr. Chair, I hope the member opposite understands that I do care about his community and the members of his community, and I am concerned that they feel that I was not listening. Believe me, I am listening, and I read everything that comes into the office, and I answer everything that comes in the office. But I will qualify that the member from Cumberland, the member of Jamie Bailey. Cumberland South. The member from Cumberland South submitted 1,000 of the same letter to me. I'm not sure how I'm going to work through that particular one, but I just wanted to make sure that people know that I do hear their concern, and they have every right to be concerned. And for those 1,000 letters that came in, I can't guarantee I will answer every one of those, but I do definitely answer all of my correspondence. Sometimes I have heard that correspondence has gone missing, and if a person has not had an answer from me through my office, then I would want them to write and inform me of that so that we can definitely have a dialogue through email and or through the Canada Post. So, Mr. Chair, I know that you've heard how I feel about this. I am concerned, and I feel quite I'm offended that the member would feel that he couldn't speak to me outside of this process around the members of his constituency. I do know it's been an extremely emotional time for the community. The decision I made is to put a stop to what has happened in this year, and I know that every government struggles with decisions that other governments have made or decisions in the past, but I'm putting a stop to what's going on now so that we can move forward, because the most important thing we have is to move forward in this process so that we end up at the end of the day with a model that other jurisdictions will may be able to copy or able to take pieces from or utilize this. I want to be cutting edge in Nova Scotia. We're on the forefront of many initiatives in this province, and as I meet with other ministers from around the world, we don't realize that we're not blowing our own horn enough here in Nova Scotia. We have well-trained teachers doing an excellent job in our classrooms. We have, even though some of our schools do have some concerns, we have, for the most part, a lot of our schools meeting the needs of our students, and especially with a lot of the renovations in our new schools. A member from Bedford, I know Bedford Birch Cove, I know that she's really looking forward to opening the new C.P. Allen School in the fall, being there to, I don't know if they'll cut the ribbon or what they'll do, but I know that it's going to be an exciting time. We all want the same thing, and that is that we want to make sure that our students get the very best education. And in some cases, some of our schools have gone past the date of no return, and I have to say that that brings to mind the situation in Amherst. I drove by a school there last year. I saw teachers working. It was at the end of August, and I think that members would like to know that many teachers are in their school in the last 2 weeks of August, and I know the member from Kings West knows what I'm talking about. I saw cars in the yard, so what I did was I pulled in. That school in Amherst is 101 years old now. This school need a new school. So they are getting a new school, and it took a little while to get the land associated with the to find the right spot for the land. But we cannot have our children going into schools that do not have the appropriate facilities. So how much time do I have, Mr. Chair? Oh, time has elapsed. Well, I just would like, if you wouldn't mind, Mr. Chair, I really would like to just end by saying that I do listen, I do care, and I want nothing but the very best for each and every one of our students. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The time has elapsed for that round of questioning. I will now recognize the honourable member for Lunenburg West.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I think people would find it a bit strange if I didn't ask at least a couple of questions of the minister, since I spent the largest bulk of my career in the education system. And I would actually like to just mention something first before I ask the question, or speak very briefly about something. A number of years ago, when I worked at the community college, and I was actually in a position called college prep coordinator at the Lunenburg campus, and I was talking to the person who was the superintendent of the school board, and I was asking the person, how many students are leaving high school, and what are the ages of these people, and why do you think they leave? And it happened to be Trudy Johnson, an excellent person, and Trudy came back to me and said, well, you know, you might be surprised, but it's actually people around the grade. I thought it'd be grade 12 students who got a job, and then they got interested in making money, and then they kind of just gave up and wanted a car or something, and kept making car payments, and maybe left school. But she informed me it was grade 10 and 11 students, and she said more boys than girls, but there are some girls too. And we wanted to stem the tide of these students leaving school early, because we knew that's not a good road for them to go down. So we had several meetings, and I asked her, I said, do you think if we could introduce some form of trades training to these students, that they might become therefore interested in a different form of education, and that they might therefore continue to go on in school and indeed become successful in life later on? And she said, if we could design a program that would introduce them to trades, that would be good. There would have to be some essential pieces to meet the Nova Scotia curriculum. We're talking about math and English and subjects like that. And we worked out a system whereby the students stayed in the high school 4 days of the week, and on Fridays they would come to the Nova Scotia Community College. Now that caused us a bit of problem, because the shops at the Nova Scotia Community College were occupied by the shop instructors. And so we had to reorganize the schedules of the shop instructors so that they would do the related subjects, blueprint reading and communications and math. They do that all on Friday, and that would free up the shops so that I could bring these students in. And I got them to sign up. We were able to do industrial electricity, industrial mechanics, cooking, at that time cosmetology as well, carpentry, diesel repair, number of auto mechanics. And the students would come in and they'd sign up for a period of like maybe 2 months, and they do that trade, and then they would circulate into another trade, and they try that for 2 months, and then into another one. And so it exposed them to a lot of different skill sets. And what we found very quickly was that those students loved it. And back at the high school, they had designated teachers. They didn't have to go to a whole bunch of different teachers, which I think we ascertained that might have been one of the problems. They needed somebody who would be more like a...
Excuse me, but I would just remind the honourable member that the remarks are to be addressed through the chair.
I realize that, sir, and I'm about to do that.
Through the chair. I'm not saying you can't.
I'm
you
sorry.
have to stop, but...
Well, I just...
You're supposed to be looking this way.
There is a question here. My friend from Glace Bay asked me if there's a question, and there is. And, sir, I apologize for looking at the minister more than you, but I will now address this through you. I will look at you, and I will look at you, and I will address my question through you. In any event, what we found was happening was once we did that, students became re-engaged in education, and we were keeping a lot of kids from leaving school, which I thought was a great idea. But that program then morphed into something I believe called O2, which is in the school system now. And my question to the minister, my question to the minister is about O2. I'd like to know how many schools they have that particular program in at the present time, and what the success rate of the students in O2 happens to be.
Thank you. The Honourable the Minister of Education and Early Childhood Development.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And while staff go through the documentation to get the answer to the member from Lunenburg, I just want to Lunenburg West. That's why I usually say member opposite, because I can never remember all of them. He actually outlined one of those programs that we have in Nova Scotia that I will use in quotes the term lifesavers. This is an opportunity that many of our children that are at risk or at risk of leaving school, as the member mentioned, who are not engaged in school, have the opportunity to look at all different kinds of options. So on, I'm trying to think, it was last Wednesday evening, yes, I think it was last Wednesday evening, when we rose from the house, I went down to the Westin Hotel, and they had an O2 showcase. Now, I want to tell you, if you wanted to be anywhere on Wednesday night in Halifax, was at the O2 showcase. Students and their teachers from across the province came in to showcase the work that they're doing. Now, some of them were actually physically doing some of the work that they have learned through options and opportunities. So I had a chance to meet with stakeholders. Those are the very kind and generous people in our community that work with our O2 students. I met with a number of, I know that I spoke with this one woman who was she's so dedicated, St. John Ambulance, that, teaching our children about appropriate first aid and safety. I spoke with the stakeholders, as I said, then I met with a number of the teachers, and it's, you know what, I always appreciate talking to teachers. It's a really important thing to do. But one of the teachers, when I saw her, I could not believe it. She was my student teacher that I had when I first started teaching back in the, 70s, but in the early 80s, I had her as a student teacher. And I also saw a young man who's the lead O2 teacher, who I've watched from birth grow up. He's teaching out in the Queens area. So that was really heartwarming, but the most heartwarming thing was to see the excitement, the confidence that our young people have that are participating in the O2 program. So I talked with a number of the students, and they explained what they've been doing. Every single student that I talked with that was in grade 12, with the exception of one who had 2 opportunities and they didn't know which way they were going. Every child had a plan of what they were doing when they were leaving school. The nice thing about O2 is that children can make the decision if they're going to go into the NSCC, because the nice thing about options and opportunities, it gives them the opportunity, if they're in there, to have a seat at the NSCC, and then a lot of the students were going to university. They were engaged in schools. This was an absolutely fantastic showcase. So on Friday, I think a number of the members will remember, I did have people in the gallery that came down from the showcase to view what was happening in the chamber. They were from the West Highlands School up in Cape Breton. I met a number of children that from Cape Breton that were at the showcase. So the question the member brought forward, and thank you very much, Dr. Lowe and Mr. Dunn. We have in the Annapolis Valley Regional School Board, we have Annapolis West Education Center, Avon View High School, Bridgetown Regional, Central Kings, Horton High, Middleton Regional, Northeast Kings, and West Kings. I just will like to mention that West Kings is the school that the member from Kings West used to be the principal of. Vice principal, yes, I know that was taught there for many, many years. Those are the schools that have options and opportunities in Annapolis Valley. In Cape Breton, Victoria Regional School Board, and I apologize, I sometimes get Cape Breton and Victoria mixed. Cape Breton Regional, it's Cape Breton Victoria Regional. I sometimes confuse that. My apologies. We have, yeah, I sometimes miss that, and I apologize. It's not that I miss the community. We have Breton Education Center, Cabot Junior Senior High, Glace Bay, Riverview, starting 2nd semester this year, I see, and so that would mean they're doing that now, and Sydney Academy. And I met some fine students from Sydney Academy. And for the Chignecto School Board, I have Hants North Rural High, North Colchester High, Oxford Regional Education Center, Pictou Academy, Dr. Thomas McCullough Junior High School. I think that's one place. Pugwash District and South Colchester. For our CSAP, we have École de Carrefour, École Secondaire de Clare, École Secondaire de Parampah, I apologize, and École Secondaire du Sommet. And for the Halifax Regional School Board, we have Auburn, Charles P. Allen, Citadel, Dartmouth High, where I graduated from, Eastern Shore District High, J.L. Ilsley, Lockview, Millwood, PA, Prince Andrew High School, Sackville High School, and Sir John A. Macdonald High School. For the South Shore Regional School Board, we have Bridgewater Junior Senior High School, Forest Heights Community School, Liverpool Regional High School, New Germany Rural High, North Queens Parkview Education Center. For our Strait Regional School Board, Cape Breton Highlands Education Center, Delbray Academy. I met with the teacher there. They made a golf course. They make golf courses. It's fantastic. You know those mini putt, they use cement and everything. Dr. John Hugh Gillis, East Antigonish Education Center, St. Mary's Education Center, and Strait Area Education Center. And Tri-County, Barrington Municipal High, Digby Regional, Lockport Regional High, St. Mary's Bay Academy, and Yarmouth Consolidated Memorial High. And with that, I also would like to say that as a plan as we move forward, we've increased looking at options and opportunities. It's worked so well and it's been so successful. We're moving it down to grade 9, and in grade 9, we're calling it Discovering Opportunities. So there's nothing more I would love to stand here and talk about is our Options and Opportunities program, but with that, I thank you.
Thank you. The Honourable Member for Lunenburg West, with about 4 minutes left before the moment of interruption.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess My next question is, and I'm going to have to get a kind of a general answer on this, I believe, because of the nature of the way I'm asking it. And I apologize. I was over in the red room, and I missed some of the questions that went on in here last night, and I missed a bit of today as well. So I apologize if I'm re-asking a question. But I think I was here for the answer to the first part of this, and my question is, how many teachers are there in the province of Nova Scotia right now? And I would like to know, generally speaking, what the average qualification level of those teachers happens to be.
The Honourable, the Minister of Education and Early Childhood Development.
Thank you. There are, I won't be able to answer all of your question, but there are 9,449 teachers. Thank you. Oh, and I apologize. I didn't finish. I think we must be getting near the end of my 4 hours, so I apologize. I know that we will be able to get the information for not only our teachers, but also all of their credentials. That would come through the school boards, because so I will ask the school boards for those lists, and how specific the honourable member wants it, I will discuss. Thank you.
Thank you. The Honourable, the member for Lunenburg West, with the understanding that after the moment of interruption, you'll be able to continue your questioning as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, my next question is related to the number of students. I just asked about the number of teachers, and I think the answer was 9,949. 9,449. How many students are in the school system in Nova Scotia?
The Honourable, the Minister of Education and Early Childhood Development.
Thank you very much. Our last count shows 120,541 students that are enrolled in our system this year. Thank you.
The Honourable, the member for Lunenburg West.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I guess in relation to that, I would like to know how many homeschool students. I assume the students, the numbers that I just got are students who are in the public school system. So I would like to know how many students are being homeschooled in the province of Nova Scotia.
The Honourable, the Minister of Education and Early Childhood Development.
Thank you very much. We have 850 children in the province being homeschooled.
The Honourable, the member for Lunenburg West.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And so that's a very small percentage, I guess, of the number of students. I'm wondering, are homeschool students funded in any way by the province of Nova Scotia?
The Honourable, the Minister of Education and Early Childhood Development.
Thank you very much. We have a province where parents have the right to decide on how their child is educated. So we have a mix here in Nova Scotia. We do have private schools. Of course, we have our public schools, which is where is the department that I oversee, and we also have homeschooling. So if a parent decides to send their child to a private school, they have to fund that themselves. And if a person decides to do their homeschooling, then they do it themselves. We do not fund our homeschooled families. Thank you.
Order, please. We have reached the moment of interruption.